Welcome to episode 107 of the Inside Job Boards and Recruitment Marketplaces podcast. I am one of your two co-hosts. I'm Stephen Rothberg with College Recruiter. We believe that every student and recent graduate deserves a great career and that it should be easy and inexpensive for employers to hire them. My normal co-host, Peter Zollman, is unavailable today, but will be back with us in 2 weeks. So I don't know if it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. I think we'll definitely have a constructive conversation despite his absence, or maybe because of it. We'll circle back in about 14 minutes and figure out if that's the case. I have two awesome guests here today. We're going to be talking about the use of large language models to do candidate screening, maybe even selection. Some job boards are doing that. Some quasi job boards that have like career mapping, career coaching kinds of information are doing that. And we're going to dig into some of the pros, some of the cons of doing that with my two awesome guests. So Martyn, why don't you go first? Martyn Redstone with Eunomia HR. You and I have bumped into each other more than once in the last couple of years. And maybe you can tell people a little bit about you and what Eunomia HR is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for inviting me on, Stephen. Really appreciate being here. So Martyn Redstone, been in the recruitment industry for coming up for 20 years now. For the last 8 years, I've been working with recruiters and recruitment tech companies on how they can take advantage of AI. My company, Eunomia HR, is specialist governance, risk and compliance advisory in that space.
Awesome. And Robert, I don't know if I should blame you, but it was your LinkedIn post that kind of kicked all of this off. So Robert Newry, Arctic Shores, maybe tell people a little bit about you and Arctic Shores.
Thanks very much for inviting me, Stephen. And so, yeah, Robert Newry, I am the co-founder of Arctic Shores. I'm actually the Arctic of Arctic Shores, the two of us that founded it. I now have the wonderful title of Chief Explorer. And my passion in life has always been about how do you not just discover potential, but how do you uncover potential? And my starting point was that the best way to uncover potential is to get people to show you what they're capable of rather than tell you what they're capable of. And so I went out and built a psychometric assessment based on how people can demonstrate what they are capable of.
Awesome. So I think about a week ago, Robert, you wrote a post basically like, this has got to stop. And for people who are listening to the audio only version, you can check out the show notes. I'll put a link to it in there. For people who are on video, there's a QR code in the upper left where you can just snap that with your smartphone and go right to your post. But maybe you can just let's start off, Robert, by talking about that post, the this has got to stop.
Yes.
Because I think that sets like a really good foundation for the conversation.
And what has got to stop around all of this is using large language models, things like ChatGPT, to screen resumes. And I've seen so many posts, people talking about what the value of AI is going to bring to recruiters. And they list 3 or 4 things. And usually at the top of the list is the thing that recruiters hate doing the most, which is looking through resumes. And so let's turn to AI to make this better. But I come from a social science point of view, and I just know that large language models are just not set up to screen resumes in a great way, in a consistent way. And actually the person who has proven what my hypothesis was and my background of psychometric science told me was not a good use of LLMs is some research that came out from Martyn. And so I made that post to really highlight something that I think people are sort of sleepwalking into without realizing what the dangers are. And Martyn did a wonderful and brilliant piece of research, and I'm sure he'll tell us about it now, demonstrating what those risks and dangers are.
Yeah, awesome. And I'm definitely going to get to Martyn in Robert's post. There's a link there to or to Martyn's tag, so it'll be easy for people to kind of go there and see that conversation. What I see a lot of, Martyn, are TA tech vendors who are basically saying, well, if you feed 1,000 resumes into this LLM to rank them, to score them, you get the results back, and then you can spend more time with the candidates who rank well. Right. And I think the goal is a good one. Maybe we can talk about the difference between maybe how can I put it, aspiration versus actualization, like what you want to see happening
Yeah.
with the LLMs in terms of like ranking, scoring, screening versus what is actually happening. So Martyn, maybe you can tackle that. And I'm also going to put up a QR code. You recently published like an LLM reality check. That takes you to a Google Drive document.
That's right.
So again, QR code in the upper left, and it'll the link will be in the show notes.
Exactly, and like ever the salesperson, you know, I think this piece of research is so important that it's completely ungated. So you can go straight to Google Drive and download it from there and make the most of it. Yeah, so look, you know, as you said, the journey is a noble one. You know, ultimately,
I love that. That's a much better way of saying it than I did. Thank you.
no, and it's true. You know, recruiters are absolutely overwhelmed right now. You know, there are, you know, and Robert's got some great stats as well around this from some of the work that he's done. But you know, there is a incredibly increased number of applications coming into organizations right now. So recruiters are overwhelmed. And so what they want to do is, as efficiently and effectively as possible, get to the candidates that are relevant, get to the candidates that match more towards what they're looking for, rather than those that don't. And so if you sit there and you're getting stressed and you're getting overwhelmed and you think, oh, do you know what? Everyone goes on about ChatGPT. I'm going to just put into there, what can I use you for with recruitment? One of the top things that comes out is CV screening. You know, you can give me your resumes and I can tell you who fits best. And so the aspiration is absolutely correct, you know. But like you said, the application is just incredibly poor. You know, there's lots that we can talk about, and I know that time's short, but ultimately, LLMs are text-based. And so all you're trying to ask an LLM to do is take a look at the text in the job description, take a look at the text in the resume, and match it all up together. There's no emotional intelligence there. There's no context. There's no reading between the lines. And look, you know, for me, this does two things. Number one, you know, we'll dive into the research, I'm sure, in a little bit. But you know, first of all, there are some technological issues, there are some ethical issues around that. But it just goes to prove that we need to move away from CV-based applications ultimately, because you know, CVs are all being written by AI nowadays, and if you throw an AI generated CV into an AI system, the results that come out of there are not results that you can trust ultimately.
Cool. And Robert, if I'm a candidate applying to a job, especially one where the employer realistically has too many CVs, too many resumes to really go through, even if they claim to look at them all, the reality is if they're ranked, if they're scored, they're going to spend a lot more attention to the ones at the top than the bottom. And if it's a high volume environment, they're not going to look at many of them, maybe most of them. So why, if I'm a candidate, would I not want that potential employer using an LLM to be screening my CV along with the others?
Well, that's right. And a lot of people have said, look, you know, humans aren't particularly consistent and they aren't reliable and they're full of bias. And so if you're telling me that a large language model has got some challenges, well, humans have got challenges. And, you know, and surely an LLM will at least be consistent about it. It'll be a bit more objective about it because it doesn't have human bias. And the thinking around that is more well, we've got a bad system, and so let's have something that's less bad. And my reason for saying this has got to stop is that actually there are many good things that AI can do.
Yes.
Let's think about doing this in the right way rather than just taking us, which is you alluded to on this and Martyn did as well. I just think the CV is a complete waste of time now because it's AI generated. So you just get AI measuring AI and nobody wins in any of this. So let's rather than automating something that has had its time, the resume, let's find out different ways to understand people. And I think this is where we've got this opportunity rather than, oh, well, let's just add a feature in a job board that will rank candidates based on what? Based on the words that they've used in there. You can put white words in there that a human wouldn't see, but a model will see that will up your rankings. I mean, it's so flawed in so many ways when you dig into it, and the tools that candidates have available to them. And this is what I don't think most people realize. The AI-enabled candidate is far more sophisticated and has far more access to tools than the corporate recruiter does, because the corporate recruiter has got compliance, has got IT security issues. Candidate doesn't have any of those things. And this sort of moral trust that used to exist between candidates and recruiters is totally broken. If recruiters are using AI and candidates go, well, I'm going to use AI then, and what are we left with?
So, Robert, follow-up question for you. So, if I'm an employer and I'm using a job board and it uses LLMs for screening, ranking, or my ATS does, I hear you. CVs, resumes, let's throw them in the dumpster and light fire to it and not look back. But let's also be realistic. That's not going to happen today. So if I'm that talent acquisition leader and I say, hey, Robert, great, that's a really worthy strategic goal. In the meantime, what do I do for the next year or two?
Yes.
Should they be using LLMs?
So, I mean, that's a great point. And the analogy I use around this is the resume is like a comfort blanket. So don't rip away my comfort blanket and leave me bare on all of this. What's the alternative? And I think there are plenty of alternatives around this. I think there are a couple of things that you've got to do immediately on this. One is you've got to give guidance on good use and bad use of AI by a candidate. That's the first thing that you've got to do. If you're not clear about it, about what's good and what's bad, candidates won't know. The conscientious and the anxious won't use it, and they'll be excluded. The chances and the extroverts will think I can get away with it, and you won't know, and you're not going to end up with the best candidates on that. So that's number one. Secondly, you need to stress test your process to see how easy it is to use AI to manipulate and cheat on the process, and then look at ways that you can give guidance, but also you can look at different tools to determine whether somebody's suitable for a role. And there are new tools and alternative tools out there. We don't have to rely on the resume. There's so many other things that now exist, psychometrics being one of them, that enable you to see if somebody's capable for doing the sort of things that you're going to ask them to do in the role.
Yeah, awesome. I think we have time for one more question, Martyn. I'm going to throw it over to you if you're okay with it, and if you're not okay with it, I'm still going to throw it over to you. So let's talk about the legal aspect, because I think, Robert, you mentioned the word compliance a couple times in this interview. Big issue, especially if you're working for a large organization. So Martyn, talk to us about if employers still feel like this technology is really great and it's going to really help me get my job, maybe they hit the brake pedal when they realize the legal issues that they're diving into.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, just to kind of cover off a couple of points.
Yeah.
My research shows that off-the-shelf LLMs, large language models, so off-the-shelf being the commercial ones, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Grok, those kind of things, they are worse at screening than recruiters. So it's as simple as that, but where that comes from, and also the research shows, is that from a legal perspective, there are various things that you need to consider. The first one is a big one, which is transparency. So most regulation around the world, when it comes to life-based decision making, so employment, financials, etc., you have to be able to, in plain language, describe how that algorithm has made that decision,
and accurately, not just guess at it, right?
And yes, and I'll be perfectly blunt. Telling somebody how you prompted a large language model is not being transparent on how the algorithm works. There is so much research out there that shows that even the people that built these systems don't know how large language models work and how they actually make their decisions. And it changes every single time based on kind of microcircuitry and what have you.
Yeah.
So from a legal perspective, it's out the window. Large language models are not transparent. They're not explainable. So that's the first one. The second one is bias. Ultimately, every bit of information that a large language model is trained on is public information from the internet, which is so full of bias. So being able to prompt and say, please remove all bias from this, ain't going to work. So there's those pieces as well, and they're really important in places like New York Local Law 144, from a bias auditing perspective. So ultimately, from a legal perspective, large language models are not the answer. I will say though that, and this is when I'm working with my clients, I try and make them understand that there are two types of AI that we work with in our world. There's judgmental AI and there's generative AI. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to fit a square peg of generative AI into a round hole of judgmental AI. And it's not going to work. There is lots of other AI systems out there that you can train, that you can absolutely and utterly make it into a fantastic screening system. But to rely on off-the-shelf large language models is irresponsible, unethical, and it just doesn't work.
And potentially, as Workday might find out, very expensive.
Allegedly.
Yes. So, well, gents, thank you so much for joining me. This was a great conversation, and I think it's fair to say that none of the three of us are against AI.
No.
Right? Like, as a theory, let's just use the tool properly. I'm not going to use a screwdriver to hammer a nail, but a screwdriver is still a good tool to have.
Absolutely. And like I say, slow down to go faster. Don't go head first into this. You can slow down, put your guardrails in place. Ultimately, guardrails are in the middle of a highway so that people can drive faster without careering off and causing horrific crashes. So that's the whole point of them.
Excellent point, Martyn. Robert, also, thank you much, guys.
Wonderful. Great to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.